The sun was warm and bright in the small town park. Birds sang softly from the trees, and the fresh smell of grass filled the air. It was a beautiful afternoon, perfect for playing outside. In the middle of the park, little Emma sat on a soft blanket. She held her favorite doll tightly in her hands. The doll was old but special to her because it had been a gift from her grandmother. Emma was 8 years old. She had a big smile and bright eyes full of curiosity. Even though she used crutches to walk because of her leg problem, she loved coming to the park. She liked watching the children run, the dogs chase balls, and the leaves dance in the gentle wind. For Emma, the park was a place where she could feel free and happy. Emma's mother, Mrs. Collins, sat nearby on a bench. She watched Emma with soft eyes full of love. She was careful to stay close in case Emma needed help. Mrs. Collins knew that the world was not always kind to her daughter. Sometimes people looked at Emma strangely because of her disability. But today, she hoped the park would be a safe place for her little girl. Around them, the park was alive with families and friends enjoying the day. A few children played on the swings. Some older people walked slowly on the paved paths, chatting quietly. The air was filled with laughter and the sound of leaves rustling. Everything seemed calm and peaceful. Emma gently rocked her doll back and forth. She talked softly to it, telling stories about adventures they would have together. She imagined they were pirates sailing on a great ship or explorers finding treasure in a faraway jungle. Her face shone with happiness. Suddenly, a group of children ran past Emma's blanket chasing a bright red ball. One boy stopped and looked at Emma. "Hi," he said cheerfully. "Do you want to play?" Emma smiled shyly. "I can't run," she said quietly, "but I can throw the ball." The boy nodded. "That's okay. Come on, let's play together." He picked up the ball and gently tossed it to her. Emma caught it carefully and threw it back with a small laugh. The children smiled and made room for her. Mrs. Collins felt a warm glow inside. It made her happy to see Emma having fun and making friends. She stood up and walked over to the children, thanking them for being kind to her daughter. As the afternoon went on, the sun began to dip lower in the sky. The light grew softer and golden. Emma played with the children, her laughter mixing with theirs. It was a simple moment, but it felt full of hope and joy. Not far from the playground, 2 police officers arrived in a patrol car. They got out and began walking through the park. Their faces were serious and their eyes moved quickly from one person to another. They spoke quietly to each other as they walked, watching the people around them. Emma did not notice the officers at first. She was busy throwing the ball and talking with her new friends. But Mrs. Collins saw the officers and felt a small knot of worry in her stomach. She had heard stories from other parents about police who did not always treat everyone fairly. She held Emma's hand a little tighter. The officers came closer to where Emma and her mother were sitting. One officer stopped and looked at Emma with a curious expression. The other officer watched carefully. Mrs. Collins stood up slowly, trying to stay calm. "Can I help you?" she asked politely. The officers did not answer right away. They looked at Emma, then back at Mrs. Collins. The older officer spoke in a firm voice. "We need to ask you some questions," he said. Mrs. Collins felt her heart beat faster. "Questions? What kind of questions?" she asked. The younger officer stepped forward. "There have been some reports of trouble in the park," he said. "We're just checking to make sure everything is okay." Emma's smile disappeared. She looked up at her mother with wide eyes. Mrs. Collins knelt down to Emma's level. "It's okay, sweetheart," she whispered softly. "Just stay calm." Emma held her mother's hand tightly. She did not understand why the officers were looking at her and her mother in that way. The other children had stopped playing and were watching from a distance. The officers began to ask questions about Emma and Mrs. Collins. They spoke quickly and loudly, making Mrs. Collins feel nervous. She answered carefully but did not like how they looked at her daughter. Emma tried to stay brave, but her fingers trembled as she held her doll. Nearby, a man named Marcus sat on a bench. He was an artist and often came to the park to draw. Today, he was sketching the trees and the children playing. When he noticed the officer's behavior, he stopped drawing. Something did not feel right. Marcus watched as the officers questioned Emma and her mother. He saw the fear in Emma's eyes and the worry on Mrs. Collins's face. He knew he had to do something, but was not sure what. As the officers continued their questions, a silence fell over the small group. The other children stayed quiet and moved away slowly. The park seemed less bright now, like the light was dimming a little. Mrs. Collins looked at Emma and gave her a small smile to stay strong. Emma smiled back, trying not to cry. The officers finished their questions and said they would be around to watch the park a little longer. Then they walked away, slowly, leaving Mrs. Collins and Emma standing in the quiet afternoon. Emma sat back down on her blanket and held her doll close. Mrs. Collins sat beside her and wrapped an arm around her shoulder. They both looked toward the playground, hoping the happiness of the day would return soon. Marcus quietly picked up his sketchbook and began to draw again. This time, he drew Emma sitting with her doll, her mother nearby, and the officers leaving. He wanted to remember the moment and the feeling in the park. The sun continued to lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the grass. The peaceful afternoon was changing, but Emma and her mother were still there, holding on to each other and hope. The park was still full of soft sounds, the rustling leaves, the distant laughter of children, and the gentle hum of summer insects. But for Emma and her mother, Mrs. Collins, the peaceful feeling had started to change. The officer's visit left a shadow of worry in the air, even as the sun shone warmly. Emma sat quietly on her blanket, clutching her doll close. Her fingers trembled just a little, and her eyes looked toward the path where the officers had walked away. She was confused. Why had they stopped her and her mother? What did they want from them? Mrs. Collins brushed a strand of hair from Emma's face and smiled gently. "It's okay, Emma. We're safe," she said softly. But inside, she felt uneasy. The officers' words had sounded cold, and the way they looked at Emma made her skin crawl. She wanted to protect her daughter from everything, but sometimes the world was not kind. A few steps away, the two police officers stood talking quietly. Officer Gray was the older one, with a strong jaw and sharp eyes. His partner, Officer Benson, was younger but serious, watching the people in the park carefully. Neither seemed to notice the small group watching them from behind the trees. The officers were discussing the complaints they had received earlier that day, claims of people causing trouble in the park, but their focus seemed to linger on Emma and her mother. Something about them had caught their attention, and they wanted to make sure nothing was wrong. Officer Gray frowned. "I don't like how the mother and daughter looked when we talked to them," he said. "There's something off. Maybe they're hiding something." Officer Benson shook his head. "They seemed nervous, but maybe it's just because we approach them like that. The girl has a disability, and they might be scared of police. We should be careful not to upset them." Gray's eyes narrowed. "Careful? We have a job to do. If people think the park is unsafe, we need to act." Back on the blanket, Emma's small voice broke the quiet. "Mom, why are they watching us?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Mrs. Collins held her daughter's hand tightly. "Sometimes people look at others and don't understand," she replied. "But we know who we are, and we don't need to be afraid." Emma nodded but looked down at her doll. She wished the officers would just leave and let her enjoy the park like before. Nearby, Marcus, the artist, watched everything unfold with growing concern. He had never seen police treat a little girl like this before, especially someone as gentle and kind as Emma. His heart ached for her. Marcus had grown up in this town and had seen many things. He knew that not everyone was treated fairly, and sometimes people were judged by how they looked or where they came from. He had spent years working to bring people together through his art, showing the beauty of kindness and understanding. Today, Marcus decided he could not stay silent. Quietly, he took out his phone and began to record. He pointed the camera toward the officers and the small family. He captured Emma's trembling hands, Mrs. Collins's worried face, and the officers' sharp questions. Marcus hoped that by recording, he could show others what was really happening. Maybe someone would listen. Maybe it would make a difference. The officers noticed the movement behind the trees and turned their heads sharply. Officer Benson spotted Marcus. "Hey, what are you doing over there?" he called out. Marcus stayed calm. He raised his hands slowly, showing he meant no harm. "I'm just watching," he said clearly. "I want to make sure everything is okay." Officer Gray stepped closer, his voice low but firm. "You shouldn't be recording police. That's against the rules." Marcus shook his head gently. "It's not against the rules to record in public. People have the right to know. What's happening?" The officers exchanged a glance, unsure how to respond. They were used to being the ones in control, but Marcus was standing his ground with quiet strength. Meanwhile, Mrs. Collins stood up and moved closer to Marcus. "Thank you for watching," she said softly. "I was afraid no one would see what was happening." Marcus nodded. "No one should feel scared in a park," he replied, "especially not a little girl like Emma." Emma looked up at Marcus and smiled for the first time since the officers arrived. She felt a small spark of hope. The officers sighed and said they would be watching the park a little longer before they left. As they walked away again, the tension in the air slowly began to fade. Mrs. Collins sat back down beside Emma. She hugged her daughter close. "We're safe now," she whispered, "and we're not alone." Emma hugged her doll tightly and looked around the park. The other children had returned to their games, and the sunlight was warm on her face again. She took a deep breath and smiled. Marcus sat back on his bench and opened his sketchbook. But this time, he wasn't drawing trees or flowers. Instead, he started to draw Emma and her mother, sitting together on the blanket. He wanted to capture the courage he saw in them both. As the afternoon moved toward evening, the park began to feel alive again with laughter and joy. But deep inside, Marcus knew that this moment was important. It was more than just a simple day in the park. It was a chance to stand up for what was right. And for Emma, it was the beginning of a story she did not yet understand but would one day remember. A story about kindness, courage, and the people who watch over us, even when we don't see them. The park was calm again, but a quiet tension still hung in the air. Emma sat close to her mother on the soft blanket, holding her doll tightly. The day's earlier events left her feeling tired and confused. Her small hands trembled a little, and she looked around nervously at the people nearby. Mrs. Collins tried to soothe her daughter's worries. "It's okay, Emma," she said gently. "Sometimes people don't understand. But you are brave, and I'm here with you." Emma nodded slowly but still felt a little afraid. She wished the officers had never come to the park, and she wished the day could be filled only with smiles and laughter again. Not far from Emma and her mother, Marcus sat quietly on a bench. He was an artist, always carrying a small sketchbook and pencils with him. Today, his hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the strong feelings inside him. Marcus had watched the police officers question Emma and her mother. He had seen the worry in their eyes and the way the officers acted. Marcus knew the feeling of being judged unfairly. He had experienced it many times before, growing up in a town where people often looked at others through the lens of fear or misunderstanding. He looked down at his sketchbook and thought carefully. Should he stay quiet, or should he do something to help? The answer was clear in his heart. He could not stay silent. Marcus closed his sketchbook slowly and stood up. He took a deep breath and walked over to Emma and Mrs. Collins. He wanted to show them that they were not alone. Mrs. Collins noticed him approaching and felt a small hope. Marcus had been watching from a distance, and now he was coming closer with kindness in his eyes. "Hello," Marcus said softly. "I'm Marcus. I'm sorry you had a hard time with the officers. I just want you to know I'm here if you need anything." Mrs. Collins smiled gratefully. "Thank you, Marcus. It's been difficult. Emma is just a little girl who wants to enjoy the park like everyone else." Emma looked up at Marcus and gave a small smile. "I like your drawings," she said shyly. Marcus smiled back. "Would you like to see some?" He took out his sketchbook and showed Emma some of his drawings: trees, children playing, families laughing. His art was full of life and warmth. Emma's eyes brightened as she looked at the pictures. "You make the park look happy," she said. "That's because it is happy," Marcus said gently. "Even when bad things happen, there are still good moments too. We just have to look for them." Mrs. Collins nodded. "That's a beautiful way to see the world," she said. "Thank you for being kind." Just then, a group of children nearby came over to Emma. They had been watching quietly and wanted to include her in their games again. "Do you want to play with us?" one of the boys asked. Emma's face lit up. "Yes, please," she said happily. Marcus watched as Emma joined the children. Her laughter returned, soft and clear. The fear that had filled her eyes was slowly replaced by joy. As Emma played, Marcus thought about the officers and what they had done. He didn't want anyone to feel scared or alone in the park. He wanted to help change things. Suddenly, Marcus's phone buzzed in his pocket. He took it out and saw a message from a friend who worked with a local community group. They had been hearing about the officers' behavior in the park and were looking for people to help bring attention to it. Marcus felt a new sense of purpose. Maybe this was the chance to make a difference. He sent a quick reply, saying he would help. Then he looked back at Emma and her mother, feeling determined. The sun began to lower in the sky, painting the clouds with soft shades of pink and orange. The park's peacefulness returned, but Marcus knew the real work was just beginning. Later that evening, Marcus sat at his small desk at home. He opened his laptop and started writing about what he had seen in the park. He described Emma's bravery, Mrs. Collins's love, and the officers' harsh behavior. He added pictures from his sketchbook and the video he had taken with his phone. He wanted everyone in the town to see the story. After finishing, Marcus shared the story on social media and sent it to local news websites. He hoped that by sharing Emma's story, people would start talking about fairness and kindness. That night, as Marcus lay in bed, he thought about Emma and the park. He hoped she would feel safe again, and that one day the officers would learn to treat everyone with respect. He closed his eyes and dreamed of a world where everyone, no matter who they were, could enjoy a sunny afternoon in the park, surrounded by friends and laughter. The next morning, the town woke up to soft sunlight and birds singing in the trees. The park looked peaceful again, with dew sparkling on the grass and flowers gently swaying in the breeze. But beneath the calm, a quiet change was growing, one that began with a simple phone and a brave decision. Marcus sat at his small kitchen table, sipping a warm cup of tea. His phone buzzed again with messages and notifications. People had seen his video and drawings from the park. They were sharing his posts, writing kind words, and asking questions. The story of Emma, the little girl with the doll, was touching many hearts. Marcus felt a mix of hope and nervousness. He knew that stories like this could make people think, and sometimes they could make others angry too. But he believed it was important to tell the truth. Meanwhile, across town, Emma and her mother were getting ready for the day. Mrs. Collins looked tired but strong. Emma, dressed in her favorite pink dress, held her doll tightly. She was still thinking about the officers and the strange questions they had asked. "We're going to the park today, Emma," Mrs. Collins said gently. "Would you like to see your friends again?" Emma nodded eagerly. "Yes, Mom. I want to play and be happy." When they arrived at the park, a small crowd had gathered near the playground. Some people were holding signs that said, "Kindness for all," and "Everyone deserves respect." Marcus was there too, standing quietly with a group of neighbors and friends. Marcus noticed Emma and Mrs. Collins walking toward the crowd. He smiled and waved. Emma's eyes widened when she saw so many people coming together. She felt safe, surrounded by kindness and care. A community leader stepped forward and spoke to the crowd. "We are here today because everyone deserves to feel safe and welcome," she said clearly. "No one should be judged or treated unfairly, no matter how they look or what challenges they face." The crowd nodded and cheered softly. Emma's mother held her hand tightly, tears shining in her eyes. She was grateful for the support and the kindness of strangers. Marcus looked at Emma and smiled. She was the reason they had all come together. Her courage had inspired the town. After the speech, Marcus handed out flyers about a new community program to help police officers learn about kindness and respect. The program would bring officers and neighbors together to talk and understand each other better. Emma watched the people and listened carefully. She didn't understand everything, but she knew this was good. She saw hope shining in everyone's eyes. Later, the officers who had visited the park came to join the community meeting. They stood quietly at the edge, listening to the stories and the feelings shared by the families. Officer Gray looked at Emma and her mother. He seemed thoughtful, no longer sharp or angry. Officer Benson nodded slowly, as if understanding something new. Mrs. Collins took a deep breath and stepped forward. "We want to work together to make the park a safe place for everyone," she said gently, "for Emma and for all the children." The officers agreed. They promised to learn and to do better. It was the beginning of a new friendship, built on respect and understanding. As the day ended, Emma played with her friends in the park. Her laughter was bright and full of joy. Marcus watched her and felt proud. He knew that being a witness, watching, recording, and sharing had made a difference. Sometimes all it took was one person to stand up quietly and say, "This is not right." Emma's story was not just about a day in the park. It was about hope, courage, and the power of kindness. And in the hearts of everyone there, a new promise was born, that the park would always be a place of friendship and love. The sun rose again, spreading soft golden light across the town. The park was waking up slowly, birds singing and children beginning to arrive for play. But today was different. The story of Emma, the little girl with the doll, had touched many hearts, and the town was ready to listen. Emma's mother, Mrs. Collins, sat on a bench near the playground holding Emma's hand. Emma's eyes were wide with curiosity and hope. They had come to the park early before the crowd arrived to watch what would happen. Marcus was already there, sitting quietly with his sketchbook. He had spent the night thinking about what he would say today. He knew that sometimes standing up for what is right meant speaking loudly, but with kindness. Slowly, more people began to arrive. Neighbors, parents, and even some teachers from Emma's school came to show support. They carried signs with messages like "Respect for all" and "Love sees no difference." The park was filling with warmth and hope. Suddenly, two police officers appeared at the entrance. Officer Gray and Officer Benson. They looked around nervously but walked toward the group. The crowd fell silent, waiting to see what would happen next. Officer Gray stepped forward and spoke clearly. "We want to apologize to Emma and her mother for how we acted in the park. We understand now that we should have been kinder and more respectful." Mrs. Collins looked at the officers and smiled softly. "Thank you for saying that," she said. It means a lot to us. Marcus stood up and addressed the crowd. Today is not just about what happened before. It's about moving forward together. We all want to live in a place where everyone feels safe and welcome. The crowd nodded, some people clapping softly. Emma watched everything, feeling proud, but also a little shy. She held her doll tightly, knowing this moment was important. An older woman named Mrs. Thompson stepped up next. She was a teacher at the local school and had seen many children like Emma who faced challenges every day. "We must teach our children kindness and understanding," she said, "not just in words but in actions." Everyone listened carefully. Mrs. Thompson's words were simple but true. The crowd felt a new energy, a promise to do better. Officer Benson spoke next. "We want to be part of that change. We are joining a new training program to learn about different abilities and cultures. We want to build trust with the community." A young father named Mr. Lee raised his hand. "What can we do to help?" Marcus smiled. "We can all work together, parents, teachers, officers, and neighbors. We can create safe spaces where everyone feels respected." Emma's mother stood and hugged her daughter close. "Emma teaches us every day to be brave and kind," she said softly. "Let's make sure no one ever feels scared or alone." The sun shone brighter as the group began to talk and plan. They decided to meet regularly in the park to share stories and support each other. The park would become a place of learning and friendship for everyone. Marcus opened his sketchbook and started drawing again. This time, he drew the group standing together. People of all ages and backgrounds, united in hope and kindness. Emma watched him and smiled. She felt happy and safe. The park was no longer just a place to play. It was a place where her story mattered. As the day ended, the crowd slowly left, but the feeling of hope stayed in the air. Emma and her mother stayed a little longer, enjoying the warm sunset. Mrs. Collins looked at Emma and whispered, "You are very brave, my love." Emma smiled and hugged her doll. "I want to help others feel safe too." And in that quiet moment, surrounded by the peaceful park, Emma's small heart held a big promise that no matter what, she would always stand for kindness. Days passed, and the little park began to change. It was still the same green space with tall trees and blooming flowers, but something new was growing inside it, a spirit of friendship and care. Emma and her mother, Mrs. Collins, came to the park often now. Emma played with her new friends, laughing and running freely. She still carried her doll everywhere, but now her smile was brighter and more confident. Marcus visited the park regularly, too. He wasn't just an artist anymore. He had become a friend to many people there. He listened to their stories, drew pictures that showed hope, and helped bring the community together. One morning, Marcus arrived early with his sketchbook. He found Emma sitting on the bench watching the birds. "Good morning, Emma," he said warmly. Emma smiled. "Good morning, Marcus. Do you want to see my new picture?" Marcus's eyes lit up. "I would love to." Emma pulled out a small notebook and showed him a colorful drawing of the park, with children playing and adults smiling. In the center was a bright sun shining down on everyone. "It's beautiful," Marcus said. "You have a real gift." Emma blushed. "Thank you. I like to draw happy things." Mrs. Collins came over and sat beside Emma. "This park is happier now," she said quietly, "thanks to people like you and Marcus." Marcus smiled humbly. "It's all of us working together." Just then, a small group of police officers walked into the park. It was the same officers who had once caused worry, but now wore gentle expressions. They carried small bags filled with toys and books. Officer Gray approached Emma and her mother. "We want to say thank you for teaching us," he said. "We are here to give these gifts to the children." Emma's eyes widened in surprise. "Thank you," she said happily. Officer Benson knelt down and handed Emma a book filled with colorful pictures and stories about kindness and friendship. "We want to be better friends to the community," he said sincerely. Mrs. Collins nodded. "This means a lot to us." The officers joined the community program that Marcus and the neighbors had helped create. They attended classes about understanding disabilities and cultural differences. Slowly but surely, they changed the way they acted, becoming kinder and more patient. Marcus felt proud to see the changes. He realized that people could grow and learn when given the chance. One afternoon, the community gathered in the park for a special event, a celebration of friendship. There were songs, food, and games for children. Emma's laughter filled the air as she played tag with her friends. Marcus set up an easel and started drawing the happy scene. He wanted to capture this new beginning, the smiles, the togetherness, the hope. Mrs. Collins stood nearby, watching Emma. "This is what I dreamed of," she said softly. "A place where my daughter can just be a child." Marcus looked up and nodded. "And it's only the start." As the sun set, painting the sky in soft colors, Emma sat beside Marcus and Mrs. Collins. She held her doll tightly and looked around at the people she now called friends. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for helping me feel safe." Marcus smiled. "You helped all of us, Emma. You showed us how important kindness is." Mrs. Collins hugged her daughter gently. "And we will keep working to make sure the park stays a place of love." The stars began to twinkle in the night sky, and the park grew quiet. But inside, the hearts of the people shone bright with hope. Emma's story was no longer just about fear or sadness. It was about courage, friendship, and a new beginning for everyone. And in that little park, surrounded by laughter and light, a promise was made, a promise that kindness would always win. The park was quiet in the early morning light. A soft breeze moved through the trees, and the first birds began to sing. Emma and her mother, Mrs. Collins, walked slowly along the path. Emma held her doll close, her eyes bright with hope and happiness. It had been many weeks since the day the officers first spoke harshly to Emma and her mother. Since then, much had changed, not just in the park, but in the hearts of the people who lived in the town. Today was special. The community was gathering to celebrate the progress they had made. The kindness and understanding that had started with one small act of courage had grown into something strong and beautiful. Marcus was already there, setting up his easel and preparing to draw the celebration. He felt proud to be part of a community that chose love over fear. Families arrived one by one, carrying food and gifts to share. Children ran and played, their laughter filling the air. The officers, now friends of the community, helped organize games and handed out balloons. Emma's mother smiled as she watched her daughter run to join the other children. Emma's face was full of joy, free from the fear that had once shadowed her eyes. Mrs. Collins looked at Marcus and said quietly, "Thank you for standing with us." Marcus smiled. "No, thank you. Emma taught me what courage really means." The mayor of the town stepped forward to speak. "Today we celebrate not only the beauty of this park, but the power of kindness and respect. Let us remember that every person deserves to be treated with dignity." The crowd cheered softly, many wiping tears from their eyes. It was a moment of healing and hope. Later, Marcus showed Emma his latest drawing. It was a picture of the park filled with people smiling and playing together. In the center, a bright sun shone down on everyone. Emma looked at the drawing and said, "It's how I feel inside." Mrs. Collins hugged her daughter tightly. "And that feeling will grow every day." Officer Gray approached them with a small box. "We want to give Emma a gift," he said. "A promise from us to always protect and respect her and everyone in this community." Emma's eyes widened as she opened the box. Inside was a small badge, shining with the words, "Friend of the Community." Emma smiled brightly. "Thank you," she said, her voice full of happiness. The day ended with songs and stories. Emma told her new friends about her doll and how she loved the park. Everyone listened carefully, sharing smiles and kindness. As the sun set, casting golden light across the park, Mrs. Collins whispered to Emma, "This is just the beginning. Together, we will keep this promise alive." Emma nodded, feeling strong and loved. She knew that no matter what, she had a community that cared for her, and in that little park, under the wide open sky, a promise was kept, a promise that kindness, courage, and hope would always shine bright.